Hi, Miss Dickinson.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah.
Okay. So, do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Sure. I'm Molly Dickinson. Um, I'm an artist who lives and works in Middletown, Rhode Island.
Mhm.
Been here for over 20 years.
Mhm.
Let's see. I went to the Rhode Island School of Design, where I studied illustration and also got very interested in theater at the time. Was doing a lot of work with the Brown Theater Department while I was in school at RISD as well. After that, I went to Yale School of Drama, where I studied scenic painting for the theater. And I went on to work for theaters like the Yale Repertory Theater, New Mexico Repertory Theater, and Santa Fe Opera. At a certain point, I left working in theater. Uh, the trend was away from hand painted, handcrafted scenery and more towards digital and video scenery. And also, a lot of very toxic chemicals were coming into the field, like fiberglass and carbon fibers, a lot of epoxies. So I left that. I worked for about 10 years in paper conservation, conserving documents and artworks on paper. And when we moved to Rhode Island, mostly took a break and worked on my painting while the kids were little. Um, which I continue to do. I also work full time for the State Council on the Arts. At this point, I manage their public art and cultural facilities program.
So that means you're kind of fairly new to like the visual art form of art, right?
No, I would say it's actually the oldest thing. I mean, I started uh, taking art classes at art schools when
Oh,
I was in eighth grade.
that's good enough.
Um, yeah, it's one of my friends has said that she works full time in another job so
Mhm.
that she can make the art she wants to make without worrying about supporting herself off of it. So I do a lot of other things, but the art is for me.
Interesting. Got a lot of inspirations for being an artist. So,
Yeah.
what would your style be if like when you do art?
Well, it would definitely be realistic. So the work that I showed at St. George's was open air painting,
Mhm.
just pitching my easel somewhere and working directly on site from what I see. So
Mhm.
a very direct response, what the French artist called first strike painting, just your immediate impression.
Mhm.
So sometimes I do take those home and then might make a studio painting that formalizes that into something else, into a more formal painting, a more finished painting, but not always. I also do some portrait work in the Dutch Old Master style. I'm a big fan of Hans Memling, an artist who worked out of Bruges during the Renaissance, um, and really enjoy his paintings and how modern they are hundreds of years later. Sometimes I match my color palette to his color palette.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I
Um,
sorry.
and that applies to my landscapes too. Really, the palette of colors that I use are colors that have been used for hundreds of years, are um, earth generated, things like red iron oxide, chrome oxide, ultramarine blue. Um, and so the color palette I use ties my work to the history of art in that tradition.
Interesting. So you paint in a really like classical way of painting, which I also really enjoy. I've been doing a lot of plain air paintings at Rhode Island and also in China. They are very fun, but
Yeah,
um the the modern art world today is like very diverse. How do you what do
very
you think of the
diverse.
modern art world and how do you place your artworks? Like what part do you place that in the art world?
Oh gosh. Well, I love landscape painting, and I am always looking at other artists working in that genre to see how landscape is relevant today.
Mm.
Is it relevant? And what are people doing in that genre? A couple artists I really like are Eric Aho, um, who's a modern painter. He does very large landscape paintings. He's represented in New York. I also like Bunny Harvey a lot. Um, who else? Gosh, I should have looked up his name. There's an artist at Rhode Island College displaying landscapes right now that I like a lot as well. I'm very interested in how landscape makes us feel. You know,
Yeah.
people respond to landscape, whether they're just going for a walk on the beach. People love the beach. It makes them feel a certain way. So, how can an artwork tap into that and create a connection? Why do we love it so much? I'm very interested in that. It's timeless, and people continue to respond to landscapes. So I'm always curious about that. It's almost existential, man relating to the natural environment. So
Yeah, but it's really true. Like a lot of times I convey my mood in like a landscape painting. Like the
yep.
proportion of the sky and the land, the tone of color, whether it's like blue or warm, like the factors in the landscape, it all really matters. Also the composition, so they really like convey different feelings. Yeah, it's very important.
That's right. And years ago, I made a painting that I titled Mirror, Mirror, just meaning somehow we look, as the human race, we look out on the landscape and we impose our feelings on it. We personify it. The landscape's just out there existing, but we might see a moody sky, a cheerful bloom. We bring our own uh, ideas and interpretations of that landscape. An angry sea. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, so it's about our relationship to the natural world.
that's indeed very important. So, since you're painting realistic, do you think there's any change in your style recently?
Um, I think style's always slowly evolving. There's nothing big and drastic. Uh, I do maintain a website that shows really my entire body of work going back to the 90s. So
Wow.
you can see some
Mm.
evolution. Uh, I do have less time to work on my things, so I tend to right now just work on gestural things, quick works, so things that I can make in a few hours. Keeping my hand quick and confident, like doing figure drawing, drawing trees, just making sure that I don't lose touch with my basic skills. And then, if I have more time, I can, develop a more finished painting. But right now, I consider all my paintings sketches. They're just quick responses, keeping my hand fresh and confident.
But they are really good. They are masterpieces. So, hope you can really
I
develop
should
this good
talk
way.
to, thank you. I should talk to you more often.
They,
Thank you.
yeah, they're really good. And I
Oh,
think
thank
doing art is just it's like riding a bicycle. Once you know how to do it, you know how to do it. So it's really hard to like actually lose it. So that's very lucky. Hope you can one day create something big.
It is, but the thing about confidence, I mean, doing something all the time, whether it's 20 minutes in a sketchbook, it keeps your confidence high. Because if I get out of touch with it, just like not going out for exercise that week, I might feel rusty or out of
Mhm.
shape. Um, and I really like to see my hand making the artwork. A lot of my works have marks that are being made. You can see me making it almost like a drawing. Uh, so my hand needs to be confident. Um,
Yep.
and I think I was telling you before, I use materials that they're stable over time, but they're inexpensive. And what that means is I can just throw away a painting if it's not working for me. I try not to be precious about my materials.
That's a good idea. Because a lot of times when I do art, I just try to give up. Like after I didn't even finish it and I want to give up. So that's a good idea.
Yeah. So have you ever bought something like a beautiful, expensive piece of paper or a lovely canvas, and then
Yeah.
I'm almost afraid to start working on it. I'm afraid I'm going to ruin
Yeah.
that precious piece of paper. So I've tried to find materials that are archival. They will last, but they're also not precious. So, if I need to make 5 drawings and throw them all away just to get my hand back, that I have that freedom.
Yep. And when I have those like top tier canvases, I'm just obligated to finish it, which kind of lost the purpose of art, which is to actually express what I want to have.
Right. You know, uh, Gosh, sometimes throwing things away is hard. Although if I have things I don't like, I do chuck them. My mother used to pull things out of the garbage, and I would throw them away again and say, "No, no, that one's not representative. It's a failure. I don't want you saving that."
But I
So,
mean, also a good idea to keep those failures so that like in the future it's a good memory.
uh, well, I mean, everybody has their own method. I try to throw them away and move on,
Okay.
and it's important to give yourself permission to make mistakes, and to say that, there's a lot of process and a lot of failure to get to a painting you might like.
Hmm.
So,
All right. Moving to the
so
next question. What is the overall price range of your artworks?
I don't charge a lot for my artworks, mostly because I do make a lot of artwork.
Hmm.
And I would rather place it with people who want those pieces. So I charge anywhere from, if I make a little teeny tiny thing, which I do, I might charge $50 for it.
Hmm.
Um, I think in my career, the most expensive piece of artwork I ever sold was $3,500.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Yeah.
What?
Most of my pieces I sell in the about $800 range.
Okay. That's a good range for like landscapes.
Mhm.
What do you think of artists like Duchamp or like that banana on the wall? That was that sold a lot of money.
Well, I love the Dada artists, and I also loved the surrealist artists. I liked the realism, but pushing the realism. Uh, I love a good sense of humor. Um, I'm a huge fan of Banksy. Uh, and so things like the banana on the wall doesn't bother me at all. It's not what I'm doing,
Uh-huh.
but part of the reason I love it is because it gets people talking. So whether you love it or hate it, it stirs the pot, and hey, we're talking about it, right? And when you talk about art, it helps you define what you like.
Whether it's becoming famous in a good way or it's notorious, it's still very like popular. Everyone knows it now, even though it's just
That's
a
right. Yeah, I mean, the Banksy that shredded during the auction is one of the most outrageous pieces of art, and I think it's brilliant.
interesting.
That being said, I do love the art object itself. I love craftsmanship. I love the human hand making things. I personally am very object based in what I respond to. A beautiful ceramic, like here's a handmade ceramic mug I'm drinking out of, um, a beautiful painting with mastery. Uh, so I like bronze or stone carving. I like things that are the object itself.
Okay, got it. What do you try to convey in your artworks?
Um, Gosh, most of the sketching is just that. It's just sketching. Um, as I was talking about keeping my hand fluid and in shape. I do sometimes then craft a studio painting out of my sketches that may have a little more intent and content
Mm,
to it, usually about the relationship of man to the environment, or how the environment can be a metaphor for our existence or our experience. I guess I would be a existentialist. Um, there's a painting I did a few years back entitled Glimmer, which was the stormy sea right down from St. George's. Stormy sea, stormy sky, huge waves, no sun except for right on the horizon. There was one of those beams of light coming down, and the little strip of sunlight that was about this big in a huge painting. Um, it almost glowed yellow. So anyway, with the title Glimmer, and a stormy landscape, it was during COVID.
mm.
How did we feel? Was there any, glimmer of hope in this uncharted waters? So, um, so I'm usually talking about the relationship of man, and how the landscape can be a metaphor for that.
Okay. So then personally for you, what would be your purpose of like doing these artworks?
Hmm.
Like does it soothe your feelings or something?
Gosh, my more considered paintings are really about, man's impact on the environment. Really, is there any landscape that we haven't impacted? I have a series called Fabricated Landscapes, and they all look quite natural at a glance, but in the subtleties, they all show how man actually changed that landscape. Is there really any raw landscape anywhere? Um, I am very concerned about the environment. Uh,
Am I?
like most people, I'm concerned and don't have a lot of remedy. I do try to use materials that are very sustainable. I have tubes of oil paint that I had in college.
Mm,
I don't use a lot of material. I try not to waste a lot. I use things that are sustainable or recycled.
mm. I also really care about the environment and I've done a lot like sculptures that responded to the environment. I've
Hmm.
once made like a penguin that's like the body is rotting down and it's mutated and it's locked in a fridge. That's
Oh,
like
gosh. Yeah.
it's sculpted in a really realistic and bloody way to like scare audiences and warn about climate change.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done a lot
Yeah.
and yeah, they are very important. I care about them.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, one way to look at it is, if I paint a landscape, I'm trying to make people stop and be mindful and appreciate that moment. Um, but am I also showing our impact? Yeah. So I really don't think there's any untouched uh, landscape left.
Yeah, but places like Rhode Island is still very rare because like it's so beautiful and there's not that much tourists. In China, all the coasts are like squished with people and it's annoying and there's pollution everywhere.
Yeah, so I actually got to travel to Hong Kong in 1989,
Mhm.
and I've never seen so many people in my life. Being in the
Um,
city, coming from a place like this, wow. Uh, my husband and I travel a little bit, and everywhere you go, I mean, there are so many people in the world. Sometimes it's staggering, overwhelming. And yet each one of us, we're all our own little boat, right? I'm me, I care, I'm one person with a life and thoughts and cares, and all of those billions of people are that too, you know?
Yep.
Oh.
Okay. Wait. Can I
Sorry,
talk?
but I digress.
So, um, how long typically does each piece of painting take?
I work very quickly. So an open air painting might be under 2 hours.
That's really
Um, Even my studio paintings, when I do like portraits, I track how many hours I spend on them so that I price them properly. If you look on my website, I have done a lot of pet portraits, and most of them are under 20 hours. I
that's
think that I work really quickly because I worked in theater for so long, and everything was, deadlines, deadlines, deadlines. You had to work so fast. So that served me really well as an adult because with, kids and a household and parents and a job, all those things that I have to take care of, I might only have an hour or two in a week to work on something. So I have to work quickly and take advantage of the time.
Yep.
I don't have the luxury of a lot of time. So I'm lucky that I can work very quickly.
Fortunately, you had this experience. Many artists don't, and that's a big common thing for artists because they don't have deadlines, so like they procrastinate a lot, including me.
They can. Yeah.
It's annoying.
Yeah. This is true. Um, yeah. Artwork's tough because you have to make the work and come at it as an artist, but
Mhm.
then you also have to switch gears and be a small business person and take care of the chores, you know, uh, your banking, your website, your photography, sending letters out, applying for things. You have to be very disciplined about the business part. And yet you have to be very loose and creative with the creative part.
I've
So
heard
it's
a lot
very
of artists have
difficult.
like an agent that helps them. They just do art, and the agent helps them like sell them and stuff.
So most artists would aspire to be so successful as to have an agent.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you have to be successful enough to pay the agent, um,
That's true.
or be independently wealthy.
Yeah, usually artists are wealthy, like from their family.
Well, some are,
Because
and some are not.
creative
And
art doesn't really make a lot of money if you're not that successful.
yeah, so a lot of big artists have big studios and office managers and agents.
Mhm.
Um, but just like anything, are you a small business or are you a big business?
Sure. Yeah, that's sometimes a problem.
It's always some tension there with all of that.
But it's manageable, as I can see from you. Very successful.
Uh, well, I make paintings, thank you, and I work very hard at my day job.
Nice.
But in the work that I do for the state, I get to work with artists all over the place, and that's very satisfying. And it does feed my own practice in that when I'm working with other artists and going to studio visits and looking at their work and mentoring them, I get to see what other people are doing, and it gives back.
Yeah, I love it.
It's so
Because art is a very diverse,
because
so you like different people have different interpretations of a same topic, so it's very interesting to share with others.
yeah. And you'll find when you get out of school, it's harder to see art, to talk about art, that school provides a very lively dialogue and is always putting things in front of you. And then when you're out of school, you have to work a lot harder to do that.
Okay. I'm I'm so lucky right now. I have the 100th.
Mhm.
It's very nice.
But St. George's is a lovely school.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So, how do you envision the future direction of your piece of art?
Ah, gosh, there's some things I'd like to work on if I had a little more space and time. This year I've actually applied for some residencies. And if none of those materialize, I'll just take a painting vacation. I'd like to work on actually some very large scale black and white drawings. Um, so which would be different. It would relate to what I've always been doing, but it would be, a slightly different step. Um, I'd like some space and time to make some big, messy work and feel like I could make some mistakes. So that would be good. You know, I always imagine retiring and having a little more time, as most people do. And, I think about things I might like to do in the future. Um, when the weather's good, I do the open air paintings. When the weather's bad in the winter, I do studio paintings. Right now, I'm trying to develop a series of artwork called Primal Places. So
Mhm.
they're studio paintings. You know, Coming out of my travels and my drawing from last summer, that looks at very quiet landscape places, almost like portraits, and wonders why we are interested in, why does this rock or this tree resonate? Why do we respond to this? How does it make us feel? So,
That sounds awesome. A lot of work, but
so yeah, so hopefully, I don't know, hopefully I got a couple things going. I'm looking at my studio through the window. I got a couple things going that I'm pleased with, and hopefully we'll develop it into a body of work that I can exhibit in a year or two.
can't wait to see that.
So one of the other things that's really challenging is working on a certain idea or a certain style long enough to have enough pieces
Oh yeah.
that that are cohesive to have an exhibit.
It's just it's really hard to like just keep focusing on one topic. I always like do a few pieces and then give up.
Right. And then you think of something else, or, attention shifts from watercolor to acrylic, or, to make work that holds together, to put it in a gallery, even a small gallery like Hunter Gallery.
Mm.
It looks small, but
Yeah.
when you start bringing your pieces in and laying it out, you got to have like
Yeah.
10 pieces
Oh,
that relate to each other. Not exactly the same, but they have to relate to each other to create an exhibit.
I totally understand. It's so hard to develop a style. That's why it's hard to become like a good artist.
Yeah, so you have to sort of say, "Oh, I'm gonna work on this year," and try to pull it together, and then next year, maybe I'll do black and white drawings or, so that can be hard.
Yeah, but it's a good way to make sure that like art is created like with quality and quantity.
Yeah, kind of a push-pull between being disciplined to stay on something for a while, but also being creative and following the thought
Yep.
wherever it leads, so I don't know. These
Mm.
are things.
Yep. Okay. That's all I have for the questions. Thank you, Miss Dickinson.
Okay.